Luis had been fighting cancer for 10 years, and I had spent all my savings to accompany him through treatments. Just when he was about to recover, I discovered that he had hired a lawyer to draft a will. I stood at the door listening as Luis dictated the contents of the will word for word. After my death, my biological children and their mother Selena will have the right to inherit all my assets. His childhood friend Selena was standing beside him with a small child crying. I held the hospital discharge certificate, gritting my teeth as I looked at that family of 3 inside the room. My heart felt like ashes. System, what punishment will I receive if I abandon the mission? I prepared myself to be eliminated as I asked the system. The lazy voice of the system sounded. Oh, I forgot to tell you, if the mission fails, it will be Luis who will be eliminated. Chapter 1. I entered the hospital room, holding the discharge diagnosis. Selena immediately pulled away from Luis's embrace. Somewhat awkwardly, she hugged the young boy at her side. Seeing her wipe her tears, I tried to suppress the bitterness in my heart and smiled as I spoke. Why are you crying, Miss Selena? I looked towards Luis on the bed. Luis, what did you do to upset Miss Selena? Luis's gaze faltered, his face unable to hide his guilt. He didn't answer my question but instead frowned and asked, "How did you get in?" His tone was sharp, rather impatient. Before I could answer, the young boy pointed at me and shouted, "Who are you? How did you appear in my dad's room?" Selena's face immediately turned pale, looking at Luis. The anxiety in Luis's eyes flashed before he coughed and tried to explain. Diana, don't misunderstand. The child is talking nonsense. I shoved my hands into my pockets, clenching my fists tightly, my nails digging into my palms. This pain was nothing compared to the pain in my heart. Today, I realized how pathetic I really am. I had been married to Luis for 15 years, and we never had children. Because of this, I always felt guilty towards him. He always comforted me. Diana, as long as we love each other, that's enough. A child is only an accessory to love. For years, I thought I was living in his love. I never thought he already had a child of his own. The boy seemed to be over 10 years old. No wonder he doesn't care. I forced a smile. It's fine, the child probably doesn't even know who his father is, how sad. Selena looked at me with disdain as she held the boy. Luis, the discharge papers are ready. Tomorrow, we can go home. I looked at him pretending to be calm. Thank you for your hard work, Diana. Luis looked at me tenderly. I turned around and left the hospital room without paying attention to Selena or the child. The door was ajar, and I stood there like a thief, listening to the sounds from inside. Selena, we've suffered so much these 15 years. If it weren't for Diana keeping watch all this time, I wouldn't have let you and your child be with me without recognition. Selena curled up again in Luis's arms. Luis, I don't care about the inheritance. I just want to grow old with you, to always be together. But during these years, Diana has done so much for me. I can't let her down, so I can only make you suffer. The boy standing to the side tightly held Luis's hand and said the same thing. Dad, I just want us to be a family of 3 always together. I crouched by the door watching the 3 of them hugging and crying, suddenly feeling like I wasn't worth anything. During these 15 years, I had always put everything about Luis first. Even when he was diagnosed with cancer with only a 30% survival rate, I stayed by his side. But in the end, I became the villain who destroyed his relationship with his childhood friend. I laughed bitterly, exhausted, and called the system. I still can't make Luis love me, I said, feeling defeated. If I abandon the mission, when will I be eliminated? After a few seconds, the lazy voice of the system appeared in my mind. You won't be eliminated. Failing the mission? That's definitely the target's fault. So the one who will be eliminated is Luis. The system's voice had a lazy, somewhat electronic tone, distorted. I froze for a moment, processing the news. Then, if I abandon the mission now, how long will it take for him to be eliminated? I closed my eyes, my voice tinged with bitterness. 5 days until his wedding anniversary. It will be soon. Chapter 2. In the afternoon of the next day, Luis was discharged. I found an excuse and didn't go pick him up, staying home to clean. Over these years, I had spent most of my time at the hospital, and the house had hardly been lived in. Now that he was coming back to live here, I had to tidy everything up. By nightfall, Luis hadn't come home. I was sitting at the table looking at the cold food while checking my phone. Suddenly his call came through. The background noise on the other side was loud with music playing. It seemed like he was at some party. I called several times, but no one answered. Just when I was about to hang up, a soft and flirtatious voice appeared. "Luis, you've been discharged, but you're not coming home. You organized this birthday party for me. Won't Diana be upset?" It was Selena. Immediately after came the voice of a teenager going through puberty. "Mom, my dad doesn't need to keep putting on a show for that woman. All these years the three of us haven't been able to live together. This house doesn't feel like home. All because of that bitch. I hate her." Luis sighed and spoke softly. "Lucas, you can't say that about Aunt Diana. She is part of our family and will always be part of your family too. Remember, I have always taught you to be polite. You cannot say such rude things." Then he comforted Selena. "Don't worry, I told her I have something to take care of at the company. She doesn't know." Selena's voice rose, sounding extremely sweet. "Luis, you are so wonderful, I knew it. The one you love the most is yourself. Of course, if I didn't love you, who else would I love?" Luis's deep voice said this in such a seductive way. But for me, it was the biggest mockery. The call was suddenly disconnected. It seemed like those heartbreaking words were just my illusion. I sat alone at the table like a stump. The food on the table had a layer of cold oil on top. Mechanically, I shoved bite after bite into my mouth. The cold grease coated the back of my tongue. The food piled up in my throat, choking me until tears burst from my eyes. With a dry cough, I ran to the bathroom and vomited. Although I had already decided to abandon the mission to win Luis's heart, that call still caused pain in my heart. Almost 20 years of feelings cannot be erased overnight. I still held a tiny bit of hope for him. Now that unrealistic expectation had been completely shattered. I lay on the sofa half asleep, half awake. The room was completely dark, only the moonlight filtered through the window. A body reeking of alcohol wrapped around me. "Diana, why are you sleeping so early today?" Luis's soft voice came from the back of my neck, his hand gently caressing my cheek. "Where did you go today?" I couldn't help but ask. Luis hesitated for a moment before answering evasively. "The company had a meeting. I thought I told you. Stop being so paranoid all the time. It's not good for your health." His tone turned impatient. I struggled to suppress the bitterness inside me. "Luis, would you lie to me?" He was clearly surprised. "Diana, you are the most important person to me. Why would I lie to you? Who is the father of Selena's child?" He was silent for a moment before suddenly getting up, turning his back to me, looking angry. "I told you when she came back, the child's father had already died. After all these years, are you still obsessed with this? Don't you trust me?" In the darkness of the night, all my senses, except sight, were amplified. I could clearly feel Luis's guilt and discomfort. Because, without realizing it, he had raised his voice. "Luis, cursing you like this, aren't you afraid it might come true one day?" I was too tired to argue with him, so I swallowed the bitterness in my throat and spoke. After that, I got up and walked toward the bedroom. Luis suddenly stood up trying to grab me, but I pulled away from him. "Diana, I explained it to you more than 10 years ago. Lucas's father died in an accident. After all these years, you've never doubted me. Why are you suddenly acting like this?" Chapter 3. I stopped in my tracks and turned to look at him. When I met Luis, I was attracted to his appearance. Back then, he was the pride of the world, a young man from a wealthy family with the attitude of someone destined for success. And I was just a poor student living on scholarships. Most of the students at school were rich or from noble families, and to them, I was a stranger. They bullied me without any restraint. They glued my chair, put bugs on my desk, and even threw my backpack into the toilet. Luis was the only exception. He entered the bathroom with a serious face, took my backpack out of the toilet, handed it to me, and helped me clean it. Then he said that I was the person he would protect. At that moment, he was the only god in my eyes. After graduation, Luis gave up everything to start a business with Selena, choosing her. That was when, for money, I joined the system to win him over. He and Selena loved each other deeply, and I could only stay by his side like a humble simp. Later, to save her family's company, Selena embezzled money from Luis's company. After the bankruptcy, Selena fled abroad. I quit my job to stay by Luis's side and help him start over. It's been almost 20 years. We are no longer young, we have reached middle age. After 10 years of illness, Luis has some gray hair at his temples, but his aura of someone chosen by fate remains unmistakable. His facial features have become more defined, and his eyes have grown deeper. But perhaps those eyes never looked at me. Then, even if I really am Lucas's father, what does it matter? Luis pulled me toward him, his cold gaze looking at me with disdain. All these years you haven't had children, so what's wrong with me having a child of my own? When those words came out of his mouth, my whole body turned cold. Before we got married, the premarital checkup revealed I had difficulty conceiving. Despite that, Luis married me without hesitation. When he was diagnosed with cancer, I took care of his company and accompanied him through treatments. The child came and went without me knowing. Back then he held me with a face full of guilt and sorrow, silently shedding tears. Diana, everything I have is yours. In this life, I will not betray you. At that moment I thought my sincerity had finally been seen. But now he used those mocking words to hurt me. I was so angry that I trembled, tears falling from the corners of my eyes onto his hand. He seemed burned by the tears, quickly hugging me and whispering to calm me down. I'm sorry, Diana. I shouldn't have mentioned this. I gathered all my strength to break free from his embrace and slapped him. You really disgust me. My stomach twisted in pain, and my heart ached with every shred of anguish. Over the past 20 years, I had asked the system countless times whether Luis had ever fallen in love with me. The answer was always no. Now I had finally awakened to the truth. Luis had always loved Selena. I was only his family. That night, Luis didn't enter the bedroom. He stayed sitting by the door all night. It wasn't until dawn that he received a call and left in a hurry. I didn't care where he went, but someone would eventually tell me. Selena deliberately sent me a message. Luis is at the hospital with Lucas taking him to see the doctor. Diana, you know Lucas is Luis's son. I advise you to divorce him as soon as possible. In the photo, Luis had a worried expression as he held the young boy's hand. Even his hair seemed to exude a paternal tenderness. I didn't reply. I simply closed the phone calmly and pulled the covers over my head. The lazy electronic voice echoed in my mind again. Host, there are 3 days left until the target is eliminated. You may choose the method of elimination. I stared blankly at the ceiling. Then let him die in an accident. Chapter 4. It seemed Luis was avoiding me. He didn't return for 2 days. But during those 2 days, news about him never ceased. Selena enthusiastically updated her social media, deliberately not blocking me. At first I glanced at some posts, but over time I grew indifferent and finally blocked her. I organized Luis's belongings, putting them neatly in the study. Then I went out to look for a lawyer with the intention of recovering the money he had spent on Selena over the years. It wasn't until the afternoon of the last day that I received his message. Where are you? I'm coming to find you. I pressed my lips together and simply ignored the message. When I got home, it was already completely dark. As I opened the front door, I was met with a mess on the floor. Men's and women's clothing scattered all over the room. There were also some empty wine bottles in the living room. Once again, I stood at the door like a thief listening to the noises inside. Luis, I'm wearing Diana's pajamas. Are you happy now? Selena asked. Selena, I love you so much, Luis replied. Won't Diana find out? I feel so guilty about this. Don't worry, darling. She doesn't know where she is and won't come back. Focus, darling. I heard those few words and felt so sick I ran straight to the bathroom and vomited. For the first time, I faced the reality of my husband's infidelity and felt no pain. My heart had already died long ago. Only disgust remained. At that moment, the system appeared again. Host, the target's emotional analysis shows feelings of guilt towards you. I let out a disdainful sound. He only feels guilty towards his own conscience. When has he ever had me in his heart? Saying this, I turned and went to the guest room. I didn't know how long they had been at it, but suddenly the master bedroom door opened. Luis urged Selena to leave quickly. Selena kept insisting he take her away. When the house finally quieted down, I opened the door with disgust. The clothes in the living room had already been picked up. My pajamas were in the laundry basket. I frowned and threw the clothes into the trash. The front door suddenly opened and Luis stood there, surprised to see me. "Diana, when did you come back?" I answered seriously, "Just now." Luis walked towards me full of apologies, trying to hug me. I saw the hickey on his neck and took a few steps back. "Say what you have to say here." "Diana, I'm sorry for what I said that day." Suddenly I remembered our wedding day. A few wealthy young men had surrounded him, mocking me for not being able to have children. "Are you really going to marry this hen who can't lay eggs? Diana is just a pathetic simp who managed to climb to the top. If you want, you could find someone better. Back when we were in school, she looked so humble. Not being able to have children is a blessing. At least she won't ruin your family's genes." Luis had remained silent among these people, never defending me. It seemed as if he was silently accepting those insults. But now his face was full of apologies, his eyes full of caution, as if he were asking for my forgiveness. I wondered if he even remembered his silence back then. I smiled lightly. "It's all right, I slapped you, so we're even." I went to the kitchen to pour myself some water. The pajamas in the laundry basket, Luis's posture visibly tensed. "I remember it was the first gift you gave me. After so many years, the clothes were already worn out, so I threw them away. You don't mind, right?" I smiled as I looked at him, my eyes full of relief. Luis froze for a moment before nodding. Perhaps realizing something was wrong, he followed me to the guest room. He trapped me in his embrace, and no matter how I tried, I couldn't break free. "Diana, these past 2 days I felt too ashamed to face you, so I interrupted him. Luis, do you love me?" He stopped, forced a smile, and said, "Why ask something like that? Seems like you don't love me." I said this flatly. "No, Diana, we've been married so many years. Love has already faded." His tone suddenly became nervous, hurried to explain. "You are the most important person in my life, the one I care for most." I didn't respond, I only said, "Let's go to sleep." During the night, he slept restlessly, calling my name in his dreams. When he woke from nightmares, he held me and asked if I was going to leave him. I spent the night without sleeping. The next day, Luis got up early and for the first time prepared breakfast for me. I looked at him indifferently and said I had no appetite and planned to go out. "Diana," he suddenly called out hesitantly and then asked, "Why have all my things been packed?" I replied with an "oh" and said casually, "Those things have been with me for a long time. I plan to buy you new ones." With that, I walked out the door. Today was Luis's last day in this world. I sat in the office waiting for news of his death. By then, my heart no longer felt the deep torn pain it used to. I had already moved past it. All I felt was a quiet relief for what was about to come. At 2:40 p.m., Luis suffered a serious traffic accident on his way to the hospital to visit his illegitimate son. He was taken to the hospital, but resuscitation efforts failed. Luis finally died. When I received the news, I was lost in thought at the office. The distorted voice of the system sounded. "Congratulations, host. The target has been successfully eliminated. 50 million yuan has been transferred to your account. We wish you a happy life." Before I could react, the system disappeared from my mind. No matter how much I called for it, it never returned. That's when I realized that this 20-year mission had finally ended. I did not complete the mission. In these 20 years, there were no winners. Chapter 5. Luis's funeral was very simple. I was dressed in black, standing in the morning hall, exchanging polite words with relatives and friends who came to pay their respects. It was at that moment that Selena burst into the room accompanied by the boy named Lucas. "Diana, why did you take the inheritance that Luis left for us, mother and son?" Selena, holding the will in her hand, began to scream frantically in the morning hall. The guests looked at us, some surprised, others gossiping, all waiting for the next act of this drama. I sneered and took the will from her hand, casually throwing it into the brazier. Selena and the illegitimate child screamed and ran towards the brazier, trying to retrieve the will. But the flames that had begun to burn reached them. Selena's expensive fur coat was instantly torn with a large hole. "Diana, how dare you burn the will?" Selena pointed her finger at me and began cursing without showing a trace of the gentle, rational, and independent woman image she had always projected. Since her return to the country for more than 10 years in Luis's company, she had always maintained that image. "Because this will is invalid," I said, shaking the ashes from my clothes with indifference. "Impossible. This is the will Luis personally made with a lawyer at the hospital. You were there that day, too." I looked at the mother and son with disdain. "The will says that Luis's assets are to be inherited by his biological son and his mother. But Luis had no assets in his name." Selena's face turned pale as she looked at me, screaming, "Wasn't all the money used to treat Luis yours during these years?" "They were marital assets," the lawyer next to me intervened. "Mr. Luis did not execute a prenuptial agreement, nor was there a division of assets with his wife before his death." Selena took a step back, staggering. If not for her son holding her, Selena would have fallen. "I am Luis's son. According to the law, I have the right to inherit his assets." Selena twisted her son's arm hard, and the boy reluctantly shouted, "Yes, I can." The lawyer nodded. "Legally, that's true, but first you must prove that you are Luis's son." Lucas, hearing this, got excited and shouted, "Fine, I can prove it, no problem." But Selena pulled him back, covering his mouth. She seemed somewhat guilty and asked, "Now that Luis is dead, how can we prove it?" "It's simple, a DNA test," I said, looking at the mother and son with interest. Selena looked frightened while Lucas was clearly at a loss. "Lucas has been calling Luis his father for years. Can there still be any doubt?" Selena insisted. Around us, people began to murmur about how the deceased should be respected and that doing a DNA test now was inappropriate. I exchanged a glance with the lawyer and then nodded. "The inheritance can be given to this child." Selena and her son looked pleased, but when they heard what I said next, their expressions turned angry. It was like watching a face change in Sichuan opera. "But this child is a minor, so the inheritance will be held in trust until he comes of age. As for the responsibility of supporting him, it will remain with his guardian." "Oh, that would be you, Selena." Then I took out a thick stack of bank statements, all showing the money Luis had spent on Selena over all these years. "This child was born during my marriage to Luis, so you are the mistress. The money Luis spent on you during all these years is marital property, and I have the right to reclaim it. If you don't pay within the set period, I will sue you directly." My series of actions left Selena completely dumbfounded. She no longer had the arrogance she once did.
I.
Selena stammered, unable to form a complete sentence. "So, Selena is the mistress? I always thought she was a single mother." I even felt sorry for her. The one who really deserves pity is the wife. She stayed by his side through all those years of cancer treatment. Finally, when he gets better, he leaves. Exactly, and now he shows up with his mistress and illegitimate child. The wife really has bad luck. Ugh, how can the mistress and illegitimate child even show their faces? Don't they understand you should respect the deceased? The murmurs of the crowd seemed ready to crush Selena and her son. Seeing the moment was right, I gave the order for them to leave. Selena left without getting a single cent and was criticized as the mistress. She left quickly with her son. I turned and looked at Luis's portrait, murmuring, "Luis, turns out you never had someone who truly loved you in this life." Chapter 6. Life without Luis simply flew by. I hired a professional manager to run the company. With a suitcase in hand, I traveled the world. This was something I never even dared to imagine during my student days. While sunbathing on a small island in the Caribbean, the system that had been silent for a year suddenly came back to life. It was that familiar lazy electronic voice, still a little distorted in my mind. "Host, it's been a long time." Lying on the beach, I lazily asked, "Where have you been this year?" "I went to keep studying." The system went to study more before I could even process the question. It interrupted me. "Host, there has been an unexpected change in your mission. The target has suddenly awakened, realized the nature of the mission, and has linked a new task." I nodded. "Now the target has been resurrected and his task is to make you fall in love with him again." "What the hell is this? How can a dead man resurrect? I already scattered his ashes. Can't the system ever do anything right? I'm finally enjoying my life, and now you're telling me he's come back." The system sounded a bit uncomfortable. "There's nothing I can do. He offered too much. He exchanged his freedom in the next life for this mission." I fell silent. I didn't expect Luis to be so bold. "If he fails the mission, I won't be eliminated, right?" I asked the system nervously. "No, you won't be," it answered flatly. "Our developer is a female engineer. She only makes heartless men pay the price. Even if Luis fails the mission, only he will be eliminated." Hearing this, I sighed in relief. "As long as I don't die, it's fine." "So, do I have to return to the country?" Now I looked wistfully at the muscular guys on the beach and asked. "No need, because Luis is already here." "Host, good luck." After saying this, the system disappeared again. No matter how much I called, it didn't respond. Then a voice I hadn't heard in a year sounded again in my ear. Chapter 7, Diana. The familiar voice echoed. A figure blocked the sunlight in front of me. I looked up and saw Luis. He was still the same as before, unchanged, just looking at me with joy. "Diana, I finally see you again." Annoyed, I put on my sunglasses and got up, preparing to return to the hotel. He grabbed me and trapped me in his embrace. "Now I know everything. My death was your choice. You approached me with a purpose." I struggled for a moment, but his arms were like iron. I couldn't break free. I decided to stop resisting and simply rested quietly in his embrace. "But I don't blame you, Diana. After dying once, I finally understand who I truly love. I know you've always loved me. You liked me since school. This time, let me be the one to chase you, okay?" Luis's confession was sincere and full of emotion. When I looked at him, I saw his eyes were red and full of tears. He seemed genuinely pitiful. But I was no longer the Diana who could be easily deceived by a few sweet words. Just seeing his face made it impossible for me to forget all the lies he had told me over those years. He even let another woman wear my pajamas and have fun in my bed. "Luis," I suddenly laughed, "didn't you figure this out in 20 years? And now, after dying once, you understand everything. Maybe you should die a few more times. Perhaps you'll become the new Einstein." Luis was stunned by my words. In the past 20 years, I had never spoken to him like this. Most of the time, I was sweet and understanding, always accepting him. Now my words were full of thorns, and he clearly wasn't used to it. "Diana," he frowned, "I know you resent me. Give me a chance, let me win you over again, okay?" Not far away, a handsome mixed-race man with blue eyes and blonde hair was approaching me. He was my new boyfriend, Ryan. When he saw Luis, his gaze was full of indifference. All his attention was on me. "Darling, you look so beautiful today. How about we go to the room later? I have a surprise for you." I broke free from Luis's embrace and cheerfully placed my hand in my handsome boyfriend's. Luis, alarmed, grabbed my other hand, his eyes red with tears falling down his face. He gritted his teeth and threatened me furiously. "Diana, don't you dare." Impatiently, I pulled my hand away. "You're truly pathetic." Luis didn't leave. He kept following me. I was having a drink at the bar with Ryan, and Luis sat at a nearby table staring at me nonstop. Ryan accompanied me to dance, and Luis also stepped onto the dance floor, standing beside me like a statue. Then, whether I was eating, swimming, or watching a movie, even when I went to the bathroom, he waited at the door. Until I took Ryan's hand and headed to the hotel room, Luis finally couldn't hold back anymore. "Diana, do you really have to do this?" He grabbed my wrist and shouted as if he had caught his cheating wife. Finally, when he got better, he left. And now he appeared out of nowhere with his mistress and illegitimate child. Truly, the wife had the worst luck. Ugh, how could the mistress and her child even dare to show their faces like this? Didn't they know the dead should be respected? The whispers around seemed to crush Selena's and her son's dignity. Seeing that the timing was perfect, I ordered them to leave. Selena left empty-handed and with the humiliating label of mistress glued to her back. She hurried away with her child. I turned to look at Luis's portrait and muttered coldly, "Luis, it turns out that in this life, you never had someone who truly loved you." Life without Luis just flew by. I hired a professional manager to take care of the company, and with just one suitcase in hand, I set out to travel the world, something I never even dared to imagine during my days as a student. While sunbathing on a small Caribbean island, the system that had remained silent for a whole year suddenly came back to life. I heard that familiar lazy, distorted electronic voice. "Host, long time no see." Lying on the beach, I answered lazily, "Where have you been all this time?" I went to continue studying. The system went to study? Before I could even process this ridiculous answer, it interrupted me again. "Host, there's been an unexpected change in your mission. The target has suddenly awakened, realized the nature of the mission, and activated a new one." I nodded. "Now the target has been resurrected, and his new task is to make you fall in love with him again." What the hell was this? How could a dead man come back to life? I had even scattered his ashes. Can't the system do anything right? I was just starting to enjoy my life, and now you're telling me he's back. The system sounded somewhat embarrassed. I couldn't help it. He offered too much. He exchanged his freedom in the next life for this opportunity. I fell silent. I never thought Luis could be this bold. If he fails the mission, I won't be eliminated, right? I asked nervously. "No, you won't be," the system answered flatly. "Our developer is a woman. She only makes heartless men pay the price. Even if Luis fails, only he will be eliminated." I let out a sigh of relief. As long as I didn't die, it was fine. "So, do I need to return to the country now?" I asked as I reluctantly glanced at the muscular guys on the beach. "No need. Luis is already here. Good luck, host." And with that, the system disappeared again. No matter how much I called it, it wouldn't answer. And right at that moment, a voice I hadn't heard in a year sounded once again in my ear. "Diana," that familiar voice echoed. A figure stood between me and the sun. Looking up, I saw him. It was Luis. He was exactly the same as before, unchanged, only his eyes were now filled with emotion as he looked at me. "Diana, I finally found you again." Annoyed, I put on my sunglasses and stood up, ready to head back to the hotel. But he caught me in his arms. "Now I know everything. I know my death was your choice. You approached me with a purpose." I struggled a little, but his arms were like iron. I couldn't break free. So I stopped resisting and calmly leaned into his embrace. "But I don't blame you, Diana. After dying once, I finally understand who I truly love. I know you've always loved me. Since school, you already liked me. This time, let me be the one to chase after you, okay?" His confession sounded sincere, full of emotion. His eyes were red, filled with tears. He looked genuinely pitiful. But I was no longer the naive Diana who could be swayed by a few sweet words. Just looking at his face brought back memories of every lie he had told me over those 20 years. He even let another woman wear my pajamas and fool around in my bed. "Luis," I suddenly laughed, "it took you 20 years to realize, and only after dying once you think you understand everything now? Maybe you should die a few more times, perhaps then you'll become the new Einstein." Luis was stunned by my words. In the past 20 years, I had never spoken to him like this. Most of the time, I was sweet, understanding, always accepting everything. But now my words were sharp, and he clearly wasn't used to it. "Diana," he frowned, "I know you hold resentment against me. But give me a chance, let me win you back, please." Not far away, Ryan, my new handsome boyfriend with blue eyes and blonde hair, was approaching. When he saw Luis, he didn't even spare him a glance. His focus was entirely on me. "Honey, you look so beautiful today. How about we head back to the room later? I've got a surprise waiting for you." I broke free from Luis's embrace and happily took my boyfriend's hand. Alarmed, Luis grabbed my other hand, his red eyes filled with tears, gritting his teeth as he yelled furiously, "Diana, don't you dare." Impatiently, I shook off his hand. "You're truly pathetic." Luis didn't give up. He kept following me around. While I was having a drink with Ryan at the bar, Luis sat at a nearby table, staring at me without blinking. When Ryan pulled me to the dance floor, Luis followed, standing beside me like a statue. Whether I was eating, swimming, watching a movie, even when I went to the bathroom, he waited for me outside the door. Until finally, when I took Ryan's hand and headed to the hotel room, Luis couldn't hold back any longer. "Diana, do you really have to do this?" He grabbed my wrist and shouted as if he had caught his cheating wife. After that day at the hospital, I didn't see them again for an entire week. During that week, apart from the yellow roses that appeared at my door every day at the same time, there were countless gifts. Today it would be a luxurious seafood feast. Tomorrow an entire set of high-end jewelry. Even Ryan said that if he were a woman, he might be moved too. But I didn't care about any of it. The delicious food and drinks I gave away to the staff, and the expensive jewelry I sold quickly to donate to charity. On the 8th day, I couldn't hold back any longer and called the system. "When will Luis be erased?" The system yawned lazily and replied, "His situation is a bit complicated right now. Making him give up might take some time." Selena exposed the news that he's still alive, and now she's clinging to him, asking him for money. I listened to the system's report with a slight frown. Ryan approached, breathing in the scent of my shower gel on my skin. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" I looked at him apologetically. "It seems I'll have to trouble you to play the role of my lover for a while longer. I thought it was something serious." He laughed as he took my hand. "As long as you love me, don't worry. I'm happy to be your lover, even the 4th or 5th if necessary." I took the initiative to contact Luis. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up, and he rushed toward me. "Diana, you've finally calmed down." I raised my hand to stop him. "Now the world knows you faked your death, so our marriage is still valid. I brought you here today to get a divorce." Luis looked a bit shocked.
Impossible.
"As long as I'm alive, you can't divorce me. Actually, there's a much simpler way. You can give up on the mission and be erased, and I won't have to go through all of this." My words seemed to stab deep into him. He lowered his gaze and pleaded desperately, "Are you really not going to give me another chance?" I didn't answer. I got up, ready to leave. He also stood up, trying to hold me back. That's when Selena interrupted. I hadn't seen her in a year, and she no longer had the grace or charm she once did. A year of drug trials had left her face bloated, her figure out of shape, her greasy hair sticking to her stained, ill-fitting clothes. Behind Selena stood the illegitimate child, Lucas. "Luis, don't you want us anymore? Don't you know how we've been living all this time?" Selena, holding the boy, knelt right there and began to cry. "This bitch Diana took back the assets and donated your inheritance to charity. Now we mother and son have nothing, and I had to run away with Lucas. Luis, how heartless can you be? Are you abandoning us now?" Selena cried bitterly, dragging her son into her sobs. A year later, the boy, no longer the meek child from the funeral, had gone just as crazy as his mother. "Dad, I never got to live with you. You always told me to wait, but Mom and I have waited for so many years. And now you're begging forgiveness from another woman? Diana is the mistress." The mistress. Luis was already fed up with their shouting. At first, he had felt some pity for them, but when he heard the boy calling me the mistress, he suddenly snapped and slapped the child across the face. "Stop talking nonsense. Your mother is the mistress, and you're the illegitimate child. You should both be grateful you made it this far thanks to Diana's kindness." Lucas was stunned by the slap, staring at Luis in shock. After a long pause, he stammered, Mom said only those who aren't loved are the mistresses. Diana is the mistress. Another slap landed. Selena screamed and lunged at Luis, scratching him. Lucas tried to help his mother, attempting to hit Luis. I stood behind them, arms crossed, watching the whole scene unfold. Today, besides inviting Luis, I had also invited Selena. I told her Luis was with me, and she came immediately with the boy. Hidden behind a potted plant was a phone broadcasting everything live. And just like that, I tore away the last shred of Luis's dignity after 20 years. Surely now social media was in utter chaos. Some bystanders who didn't understand the situation even called the police. The police arrived quickly and took all of us to the station. When we were finally released, Luis ignored Selena's curses and grabbed me directly, his bruised face full of desperation. Diana, you saw it today. I have nothing to do with Selena anymore. Can you forgive me? I stood on the sidewalk waiting for Ryan, not even looking at him. Diana, what do I have to do to make you forgive me? If apologies worked, why would we need the police? I asked with a smile, though it didn't reach my eyes. What happened today, the netizens in our country must already know. You should start thinking about how to divide the assets. Hearing my words, Luis narrowed his eyes, his tone turning unpleasant. Are you calculating against me? I replied impatiently, maybe. But you've been calculating against me for years. When I traveled the country looking for the best doctors for you, you were with Selena. When I managed the company, you were enjoying life with Selena. Luis, all of this is what you owe me. But it was that bitch Selena who seduced me, he shouted. I've always loved you, Diana. I just realized it a little too late, Luis cried as he held my hand, burying his face in my palm. I felt the wetness on my skin. They must have been his sincere tears. Did Selena force you to cheat on me? I asked coldly. Did I force you to have a child with someone else? Luis, you're a greedy, shameless bastard without an ounce of responsibility. Stop making excuses. You truly disgust me now. Luis slowly lifted his head, his eyes brimming with tears, his shoulders collapsing as if crushed by the weight of my words. Let's get this divorce over with quickly, if you still have a shred of conscience left. After that, I turned away and got into Ryan's car. Recently, the Caribbean had entered its rainy season. The island was often soaked in sudden, torrential downpours. During this time, I was waiting for the flights to resume, spending my days at the hotel with Ryan. And then, Luis appeared outside my window. The heavy rain had drenched him to the bone. He stood there in the garden, staring blankly at my room's window. Ryan leaned against the glass, a hint of pity in his voice. Maybe we should let him in. If he stays out there any longer, he'll probably get seriously ill. That's fine. I'll be a widow and won't need to bother with a divorce again. I continued reviewing the company's financial reports without even lifting my head. The next morning, the sky finally cleared. Luis was still curled up outside my window. Ryan approached him, took his temperature, and took him to the hospital. Afterward, we packed our bags and headed straight to the airport to return home. I saw Luis again a week later. He showed up with Selena and Lucas. We had agreed to meet at the lawyer's office to sign the divorce papers. When he saw me, Luis's face lit up with hope and joy. Diana, that day when I took you to the hospital, did you really worry about me? Have you forgiven me? I looked at him mockingly. You'd waste your imagination if you didn't write melodramatic romance novels. Selena clung to Luis, rolling her eyes dramatically the moment she saw me. Hurry up and sign the divorce papers. Once the cooling-off period is over, we'll go straight to the civil affairs office. Ignoring her, I walked straight into the meeting room. Since Luis was the one at fault, he insisted on walking away with nothing. After signing the agreement, Selena caused a scene at the door of the law office, screaming about how heartless Luis was. I put on my sunglasses and turned to leave. But unexpectedly, Luis shouted behind me, Diana, I will win you back. Without looking back, I walked straight out of the lawyer's office. What terrible luck. Even after the divorce, Luis didn't give up. He kept harassing me both abroad and at home. He even held a press conference, publicly admitting his infidelity in front of the national media and apologizing to me. Then he made a heartfelt confession, claiming the divorce was only to love me better. He even promised a grand wedding to make up for past regrets. I laughed at all of it. Ryan and I simply registered our marriage. The day we announced it happened to be the same day Luis had planned to propose to me live on camera. He was standing outside the hotel with $1 million diamond ring, surrounded by reporters, waiting for me. But Ryan and I showed up holding our marriage certificate. All of Luis's efforts these past days became a joke. Ryan even mocked him openly in front of the media. "Old man, what's the point of playing the prodigal man returns at your age? Where have you been all these years?" Luis knelt on the ground, staring blankly at the marriage certificate in my hand as the diamond ring slipped from his fingers. "Dear friends of the press, my marriage with Mr. Luis is long over." Taking advantage of his stunned silence, I announced my new marriage right in front of the cameras. "This is my husband now, Mr. Ryan. We hope you'll all give us your blessings." Ryan and I smiled happily as we accepted interviews from the press. Luis looked utterly defeated, collapsing to the ground. "This isn't right, this isn't how it's supposed to be. Diana, you're playing with me? You're still mad, aren't you?" He went completely crazy, grabbing my neck in front of the cameras and screaming. Ryan quickly kicked him away, sneering, "How dare you touch my wife? You really don't know your place." Just as Luis was about to lunge at me again, Selena suddenly appeared, waving a knife in her hand and screaming as she rushed at Luis. "You bastard! How dare you abandon me? I gave you a child. I've followed you for 20 years without a name, without a title." With a sickening thud, the knife plunged into Luis's abdomen, and blood began to pour out instantly. The crowd gasped in shock. The reporters' cameras immediately zoomed in on Luis and Selena. No one could have imagined that the media Luis had originally invited to witness his so-called happy ending would now be covering his life-or-death situation. Selena was quickly subdued by the police, and Luis was rushed to the hospital. Everything he had so carefully planned became a complete farce. Luis woke up 3 days later. As soon as he regained consciousness, he insisted on seeing me. When my assistant informed me, I was getting ready to leave for my honeymoon with Ryan. Ryan looked at me, waiting for my decision. "There's nothing to see. Let him deal with it himself." Ryan waved the assistant away without another word. "Aren't you curious how Luis will react when he finds out about the illegitimate child?" Ryan's eyes glinted mischievously. Honestly, I wasn't particularly interested in this matter. After all, whether Luis was alive or dead no longer concerned me. But seeing Ryan so intrigued, I thought it necessary to satisfy his curiosity. I followed him to the hospital. Luis, due to the lack of oxygen, had been left paralyzed. He sat in a wheelchair, utterly defeated. Yet when he saw me, there was still a flicker of hope in his eyes. "Sir, we're here on behalf of someone." It was Ryan who spoke, not me. "Mrs. Selena refuses to cooperate with the lawyer and only wants to see you. I understand your health doesn't allow it, so I've come to deliver her request. She wants you to take care of your son." Luis couldn't speak fully now. He could only nod. Then, he looked at me with a deep, lingering affection. "By the way," Ryan stepped in front of me, blocking his gaze, "regarding your so-called illegitimate child, here is a DNA test conducted by the police. We thought you had the right to know." Luis clutched the paternity test report in Ryan's hand. Furious, he slammed his head down onto the papers and threw them aside. A guttural sound escaped his throat, and for a long time, he couldn't utter a single word. His eyes rolled back. Doctors rushed to his aid. Even as they wheeled him without dignity toward the operating room, he clung to a thread of consciousness. I watched as they tossed him onto the stretcher and couldn't help but laugh. "Luis, you truly are pathetic." Selena was completely finished. The illegitimate child could not inherit Luis's fortune because he wasn't his son. Luis had no obligation to support him. The boy was sent to an orphanage. Because of his terrible temperament, he was often rejected by the other children. One day, Unable to bear the isolation any longer, he slipped out secretly in the middle of the night, intending to find Luis. However, on his way to the hospital, he was struck by a speeding car driven by someone under the influence. His body was flung 100 meters, and he died on the spot despite attempts to save him. After marrying Ryan, we began traveling the world. The next time I heard any news of Luis was 2 years later. That long-missed voice of the system sounded once again in my mind. "Host, long time no see." After so long, I felt a certain nostalgia for that familiar electronic voice. "Still training all this time?" I joked lazily. "Of course not, I've been with you in another way." The system's tone had lost its usual laziness and now carried a more serious note. "The system shows that Luis has abandoned his mission and will soon be erased. He requests to see you." I stretched lazily. "Whether he's alive or dead is no longer my business. Luis's final testament states that all his assets are to be left to you." I poured myself a glass of water and nodded slightly. Since he had left me with nothing in the divorce and now had no assets to speak of, this testament made little difference. I looked around the room, but Ryan was nowhere to be seen. Normally, he couldn't bear to be apart from me for long. I wondered where he had gone today. "System, do you know where my husband went?" I don't know why, but I asked the question without thinking. The system suddenly fell silent. No matter how many times I called, there was no response. Just as confusion began to settle over me, a familiar voice suddenly rang out behind me. "Host, I'm right here." I turned to see Ryan standing in the doorway, smiling at me. "Host, I forgot to tell you, the system you're bound to is for life. For the rest of your life, I'll be right here with you. I'll never leave you,